Today we will talk about a movie called The Balkan Line from the year 2019, telling us the story of a Russian operative who leads a team on a dangerous mission in 1999 during the Kosovo War to evacuate a Serbian president and his family from the war zone while facing intense conflict and political intrigue. And so without further ado, let's get straight to the video. But before we start, please support our channel by subscribing and click the bell icon for future notifications. Now, let's start. The movie begins with a battle in the Bosnian forest in 1995, where there was a group of Russian soldiers who were preparing to carry out a mission to capture a man named Harun. There was a man named Andrei Shatilov. Andrei himself was a commander of the 6 Russian troops. And there is also a sniper named Vera. Long story short, a man named Slash from the Russian army managed to find Harun, and they got into a fight that almost got him killed, but luckily his friend, Kiraya, came to help. And they were assigned to bring Harun alive. After Slash's knife was thrown, Harun quickly stabbed Kiraya's body to death. Fortunately, his friend Jairi appeared and immediately caught Harun. Then they all called for an emergency evacuation due to Kiraya's increasingly critical condition. Long story short, they arrived in the helicopter. There was Slash, who turned out to be Kiraya's brother-in-law, and he encouraged Kiraya to stay alive. However, Kiraya suffered fatal bleeding, causing her to die. This infuriated Slash, who blamed Harun for Kiraya's death and immediately judged him. However, Slash's anger was prevented by Beck. This is because they all work under NATO orders. If they commit violations within the zone, then they will be tried by the military. This made Andrei very angry with Beck and did not hesitate to throw Harun from the helicopter. And for the threats against international envoys, 6 of them were dismissed from the Russian military. The scene shifts to Yugoslavia, seeing NATO troops lowering missiles to destroy the city, and the city seeing a husband and wife arrive at the hospital to give birth, but suddenly, this situation made the hospital destroyed by a bomb that was dropped by NATO, but fortunately, the man was still able to survive and entered the hospital to find a wife. Until when he arrived at the room, he was very surprised to see the condition of his wife, who was dead, but fortunately, their first child was born and survived. After that, the man was surprised by the appearance of a nurse who survived and immediately saved the baby and ran away with the baby's father. But not long after, another explosion occurred in the house and the father of the baby died instantly. The explosion incident resulted in the death of 70 people, most of whom were women and children. Three months after the explosion incident, a Russian general saw Beck, a former military commander. There he told Beck that the attack on Yugoslavia was coming to an end. When they leave the region, the power will be taken by the Albanian bandits. This makes conditions worrying. This is because the large airport in Kosovo will be the responsibility of the UK, to be assigned to guard the airport until the Russian military arrives. Somewhere we see Andrei arriving at a house to create a fake identity, and the phony name is Raid. But moments later the police chief came and immediately interrogated him, knowing that Andrei was going on a mission in this area. He was threatened with deportation to Russia if he didn't confess and would be given a job if he told the truth. Meanwhile, Jasna was offered to fill the vacancy for the medical team at a hospital, but he turned out to be submitting a letter of resignation due to trauma from the previous incident. The scene switches to Defender, who picks up his old friend named Jairi. They reunite after 4 years without communication. Meanwhile, Commander Milik informs Andrei that a group of terrorists has captured Pristina Airport. The terrorist group is led by a man named Smuk. Smuk is famous as a cruel person and has the heart to kill anyone who gets in his way. Their commander Milik asked Andrei to help volunteer in this attack because he realized Andrei had good skills in warfare. On the other hand, Beck started to visit his friends one by one to invite them to join him on a mission to take over the airport, where he guaranteed that they would not be imprisoned, could return to Russia, and could get a Medal of Honor that they had not previously received. With the offer, they finally agreed. The scene switches to Milik, where he gets a report that there was a big robbery and the person who robbed it was the person they were looking for. Without wasting time, they immediately headed to the location. Arriving at the location, they immediately stalked the robbers from a distance. And Vuk himself ignored orders from the commander, not without reason. It turned out that he held a grudge that the Vuk family had been massacred by the robbers. Fadil, who knew about this, immediately reported to Milik, and quickly Andrei immediately went up the mountain because he knew there would be snipers aiming at Vuk from a distance. And shooting action ensued. After the situation was safe, Milik returned Andrei's passport. On the other hand, Beck has gathered his friends, and without Andrei, Beck himself will be their leader. The scene moves where Andrei looks like he is going out of town, and on the way, Andrei meets Jasna. And finally, they got acquainted and left on the same bus. On the way, and suddenly, they are stopped because they are fired upon by robbers, and the mastermind of this attack is Smuk, who warns that anyone who enters Kosovo territory must be checked first, and if there is resistance, they will be punished. Andrei was the first to be examined, and he admitted that he had lived in Russia for a long time and said he would visit his sick brother. However, he was beaten until he was unconscious. Everyone was shocked when Smuk hit an old man. Then he checked a priest's luggage, but the priest didn't give it to him because the sinner couldn't touch it, and Smuk shot him straight in the head. When Jasna was about to be harassed, lucky Andrei realized and shot them right away. After that incident, Andrei told them to get on the bus to leave the terrorists.
Le Christ est mort.
Arriving at the hospital, the doctor quickly asked them how they were, and Jasna said that a group of terrorists had attacked them. After delivering the priest's body, Jasna thanks Andrei, and Andrei offers Jasna to stay at his house because he rarely occupies it. However, Jasna refused because he was allowed by the hospital to stay until tomorrow. The next day, Smuk goes to a battered Milik to force him to tell him where Andrei is. Milik, who was the police commander and even then, was not afraid of him even though he had received threats until finally Milik was shot by Smuk. The scene switches to Andrei, who receives a call from Fadil, who says Milik has died. On the other hand, Jasna was seen who was about to donate blood for a small child, but soon he was called to see a doctor. And in fact, the two doctors who helped Jasna had conspired with Smuk, and Smuk, who didn't like being controlled by anyone, so he killed the two doctors to death. Then Smuk approached the hostages, and there he again forced Jasna to tell Andrei's whereabouts, but Jasna remained silent. Smuk threatens to take a woman. If Jasna gives an answer, the woman will be released, but if she doesn't, the woman will be slaughtered. Because Jasna remained silent, Smuk finally slit the woman's throat in front of Jasna, and again threatened Jasna by threatening to kill a child. There, Jasna could not bear to see a child being slaughtered, and he was forced to give the location where Andrei was. Without wasting any time, Smuk goes to Andrei's house, and the others are asked to look after Jasna, and the other hostages are killed. After they left the airport, Vera was seen observing. And that's when they split their position. The scene moves, where Russia has prepared to deploy its troops to go to Pristina airport. Meanwhile, Andrei and his two colleagues had arrived there, where he immediately took aim from a distance, but without realizing it, the defender and his team were already inside the airport and controlled the airport. The scene shifts to Smuk, where he and his team are on their way to Andrei's house. However, when he contacted his friend at the airport, he did not get any response, and he immediately ordered a car to return to the airport to check the conditions there. When Andrei was sneaking into the airport, he was surprised by Vera, who immediately beat him, and then Beck came there and asked about Andrei's whereabouts in this place. Andrei replied that the place was the headquarters of the terrorist he was after. After chatting, Vera said that 4 enemies were coming. But unfortunately, the enemies realized that a sniper was stalking them, and of the 4 enemies who came, 2 managed to escape. After that, Beck invited Andrei to join them, and they immediately prepared ammunition and traps to anticipate the opponent's arrival. On the other hand, Smug managed to come to Andrei's house, and he was annoyed that Andrei wasn't home. Then one of his men said they had managed to take control of the airport. The scene shifts as the Russian soldiers are on their way and will arrive at Pristina Airport the next day. Then Beck contacted the general and asked to change his plans. Because with his army that was a little clear they would be overwhelmed, but the general did not pay attention to it. When they finished preparing everything, a small child came to their place and understood that it was a trap. Then it looks like Smuk's army has arrived and lowers all his troops. But suddenly, a flare was lit by Beck's troops, and it was a sign that a battle had begun. And there was a tense shootout. While they were happy, because they had succeeded in defeating Smuk's troops, Smuk immediately mobilized his second army and attacked again. Then Fadil got first aid, and they started to get desperate because Smuk kept deploying his troops. Next, Smuk deployed dozens of his mortars, and one by one Beck's troops were thrown into chaos. And because the attack made them switch positions, and then Beck told them all to back off. Where Jairi told Fadil to save himself, and Fadil had to leave Jairi because the condition could not be helped anymore. And Vuk, who saw his partner fall from the rooftop, then he ran to save him, but because he was running in an open space, making him vulnerable to being shot by the enemy. And sure enough, a gunshot aimed at Vuk and made him quite badly injured. On the other hand, the general received a call from his superiors to order his troops to withdraw. And they risk being suspended from the military if they don't follow orders. Back to Vera, who turned out to be alive, even though half of her body was crushed by the rubble. And on the other hand, Slash was seen riding in a car to blow up enemy mortars, and then he died after blowing up a car in front of the enemy's men.
J'ai besoin d'un coup de main.
Long story short, tomorrow has arrived. Now Smuk's troops are left with 20 people, and so are Beck's troops who lack personnel and ammunition, and without wasting time Gairj managed to secure Vera. There, Jasna saw Andrei lying down, and immediately helped him, but without realizing it Smuk was still standing and managed to shoot Andrei, who was Jasna's shield. The defender who saw this came to their aid. Long story short, Beck's troops gave up a little because they had little ammo left, and Smuk was seen arrogantly carrying Vuk's head and asking them to just give up. Finally, the decision was taken. They preferred to commit suicide rather than die at the hands of Smuk. But suddenly Smuk's troops retreated when they saw dozens of tanks coming toward him. In the end, Beck's troops calmed down when the reinforcements arrived. At that moment it was seen that Smuk was about to run away, but suddenly It was also seen that the Russian troops immediately helped Jasna, but the others immediately left before their whereabouts were known by the Russian army. Not long after that, British troops arrived by helicopter, but they were not allowed to disembark because the airport had been officially controlled by the Russian army. 1 year later, Andrei was able to get through a critical period and ventured to meet the person he loves, Jasna, and he told Jasna that he loved her. And the movie finally ended. What do you think of the movie? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like, also support the channel by subscribing, and click the bell icon so you won't miss our future recaps. And if you have any movie you want us to recap, please do tell us in the comments section as well. And until next time.